Now, speaking of Napoli, Victor Osimhen is still there, and we expect him to still be there when the Saudi transfer window shuts in a few hours. Jules, Napoli left him off their 25-man Serie A squad list too. Stuff's getting real here.
I find this really, really sad, this situation. I don't know whose fault is it. I don't know if it's Osimhen. I don't know if it's his entourage. I don't know if it's De Laurentiis, Napoli. Conte. I'm not really sure who, but like a player, whatever level you are in, or good or not good you are, young or not young, any player who doesn't make a squad like that, who would spend the whole season not playing any competitive matches, that's what it is, really.
Well, it's not that bad. So a couple of things here. One is you are allowed to make up to 2 changes to the squad between now and January. So they could bring it. They've said they're not going to, but then I also wonder, did they say they're not going to because the Saudi window's still open when they were talking on Sunday, and then after that they're like, oh look, we've clarified matters. They can always bring him back. At this point, you're stupid if you don't bring him back in.
Even if you bring him back, you can't play Lukaku and Osimhen front two, can you? I mean, I would love to see it, personally.
If there's one man who can make it work, it's actually Antonio Conte. No, look, the guy knows his onions, right?
I mean, I would love that.
It's obvious they planned on selling him. But I think bring him back, find a way to showcase him, whether it's the whatever it is, you still get to play for Nigeria, presumably.
Yeah.
And shift him in January.
Great, though. It's still not a good look for anyone.
No, and I think everybody screwed the pooch on this one. There's reasons outside their control, such as the current state of the market. There are reasons within their control, such as and within the control of Osimhen's agent and his people, but also of Napoli and the way they handled this thus far. Yeah. I think the Paris Saint-Germain deal could have been done if they had moved and hadn't played silly buggers when it first came up in July.
Yeah, apparently Luis Enrique was not too keen. I don't know. Substitutes Angel Correa and the only living Soloth in captivity combined for the only goal as Atletico Madrid get a big win away at Bilbao. Gab, this time Simeone got his striker rotations correct, and Julien Alvarez, who started.
Yeah, so he has 4 sort of top-tier strikers, right? Yeah. Julien Alvarez, the only living Soloth in captivity, Angel Correa, and that Griezmann fella, right? I think he's used 3 different combinations in his first 4 games. We slaughtered him in midweek because Alvarez and Griezmann were doing good, and then he took them off, and then they became terrible. This time they play badly. He takes them off, and these 2 guys win the game for him. Sorloth winning the ball in midfield, Correa, Mr. Super Sub. I think if you're going to do this, I think Griezmann expects to play regularly. I think Alvarez, you spend a ton of money on him. I am not a big Alvarez guy, as you know.
Yeah.
I think they vastly overpaid for him.
Massively.
I think he needs to think about this one, but if there's a guy who's got the gravitas to make difficult choices, and maybe even serve up more Sorloth Griezmann, or maybe the Smurf tandem of Griezmann and Correa, I don't know. It's that guy.
And he brought his son on as well, Giuliano, which must be quite special, quite emotional. Imagine being the coach of a team like that, and then you bring your son on.
Yeah, he can ring up Sergio Conceição to see how that feels. It's that time to check in on our buddy John Texter.
JT.
Olympique Lyonnais looked dead and buried at home to Strasbourg on Friday night before John Texter in the stands sent really good mental telepathic vibes to his team. Alexander Lacazette, Malik Fofana, and Gift Orban combined to cue a remarkable comeback, and they win 4-3.
Well, again, you're right. They were 3-1 down. With half an hour to go, and they scored 3 goals in the space of 12 minutes, I think it was, to turn everything around and win 4-3. Orban and Fofana especially, like, being outstanding when they came on. I don't think they can do it consistently over 90 minutes. That's why they are.
Fofana is what, 19?
Yeah, he's really young. So promising. Gift Orban, we've seen him being hot and cold even in the same game. But that, in that moment, in a stadium that exploded after booing their own players a few minutes before, was just incredible, and they needed that badly because they were bottom of the table. So another defeat then would have been terrible. Instead, it's a massive win who just changed the dynamic, turned everything around. So it was really good to see.
Did they need to also sign Wilfried Zaha on loan? Which, by the way, all this like financial difficulties they supposedly have, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a loan, but because they thought that
they need
Nuama was going to go to either Fulham or Everton, but in the end he decided to stay. So they signed somebody to replace someone who ended up staying, which again, going back to where we're talking about smart decisions from some clubs, that was not very smart.
Smooth move, Texter.
Yeah. And this was also back on Friday, Gabby, but Inter destroyed Atalanta 4-0 as Nicolo Barella scores a worldie and my boy Marcus Thuram bags another brace. Are you surprised by how good Inter are already or how Atalanta were bad?
We know Inter are really good. We know it's a well-drilled team. They have a coach who knows what he's doing.
Hour, it was just incredible, I thought.
I think the questions about Inter are going to be about whether some of these older players, how they hold up throughout the whole season and so on. They're not going to be them being unprepared for games like this. They had their game where they were lackadaisical earlier this season, and this was all business. I am surprised how difficult it is for Atalanta to make the pieces fit. Obviously, players have gone, players have changed, Retegui, whatever. But you expect a better showing. And you certainly expect more intensity as well. Again, you can suggest that heavy workload, start of the season, blah, blah, blah. Maybe. But you need to do better.
Yeah, I agree.
Marseille and our boy De Zerbi, meanwhile, win again. As Mason Greenwood scores 2 goals in the space of a minute. And they win 3-1 away to Toulouse.
Yeah, with Luis Enrique and Harit again, that front three heavily involved. Not so much Eli Wahi, but really good for Greenwood, who's been on fire. Again, we can say how good he's doing on the pitch, despite everything that happened off the pitch before. This is something that is okay. But really, they have been great. They dropped those 2 points against Reims. That's why they're only on 7 points and not 9, but they should be on 9. But De Zerbi himself saying there's a lot of work to still be done because they're nowhere near where he wants them to be. So they will compete with PSG. They'll be great all season, I think. It's a lackluster draw for Borussia Dortmund away by Werder Bremen. Sorry, Gab, Nuri Sahin has a lot to do.
I can't decide if this was the worst game I watched this weekend or if it was the Juve Roma game.
Oh, yeah, probably.
At least this game had a bunch of yellow cards.
And a red card as well for Schlotterbeck.
Schlotterbeck managed to get 2 yellow cards. I think Werder Bremen had 1 shot on goal, something like that. Look, people are going to point to the back line and the fact that they got all these bookings and everything. But Dortmund's giving you very little going forward. He changed everybody except for Sabitzer, who he probably should have changed because he was really bad. He's got to figure this out. I expect at least intensity from Dortmund. That's been a hallmark. Shine needs to figure out how he's going to reintroduce that.
Yeah.
Ivan Toney is off to Al Ahly for around £40 million. Jules, he's 28. This is not an absurd price. Are you a little surprised nobody seriously took a look at him? Because even though in the media it's like, oh, Arsenal, Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. My understanding is none of these people ever got very far in considering Toney.
No, they didn't. Maybe the suspension for gambling was a bit of a problem. Just in case he might do it again, he might not. We don't know.
Well, if he's considering doing it again, he's going to the wrong place.
That's for sure. I don't know. I think it's a bit strange. It's a shame. I think that he's going to Saudi now at this stage of his career. I mean, that is probably then him finished for the national team. You would think he can always come back to Europe in a year or two, I guess. But.
I'll say this about Toney, and look, I've been very critical of him in the past, especially his ridiculous defense in the gambling case. But this is a guy who's playing for, was it Peterborough?
Yeah.
This is a guy, Brentford, as you know, are incredibly stingy. It's a club of Scrooge McDucks there, right? Mm. He's never made a lot of money. And we're not talking about somebody who, like, when we talk about people going to Saudi for the money or whatever, we're talking about people who've got 50 million in the bank and they want another 50 million, right?
Yeah.
This guy does not have 50 million in the bank. And no, not because he gambled it all away, right? This guy does not have a lot of money. He simply does not, right? And his career is going to end and he does not have an education and whatever. This is one person who I do not begrudge cashing in. If this was his mentality, right?
Yeah.
I think we have to accept that because his story is very different from that of other players.
US national team goalkeeper Matt Turner ended up going on loan after all, joining Crystal Palace. Gab, is he going from one backup role to another?
I mean, I saw Dean Henderson play at the weekend and he looked really good. He made a really good save off of Nico Jackson. He was a guy who's been part of the England setup. I don't know. I don't know who's advising him. I don't know if it's him saying, like, you got to believe in yourself, Matt. And, like, anywhere you go, you can win the starting job. You can prove all of the guys are wrong. I don't know. Like, I genuinely... Like, Henderson hasn't been at Palace that long, so presumably Palace actually like Henderson.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if, like, he couldn't handle being number 3 at 4. I mean, Forrest pushed him out.
Yeah.
Because you're number 3. Okay, fine.
You go from 3 to 2, maybe?
How about you go to a different country where you can be number one and you can actually play because you've got a World Cup coming up in 2 years. And by the way, if there's one thing that U.S. football keeps producing is goalkeepers. Not necessarily very good ones, but they produce a lot of them.
Yeah.
And if I'm Pochettino and I'm like, yeah, this is Matt Turner, who is this guy, versus some other dude who's playing in MLS or whatever, and there are other U.S. goalkeepers out there, you know, I might be considering that. Do I want the guy who never plays? You know, and this is what makes me a little bit surprised by it. I don't know if maybe there's links with, obviously, you know, some of Palace's owners, they have links to other clubs. Maybe they said if it doesn't work out in January, maybe you go to one of other clubs. Or maybe Texter, if he still owns part of the club, he can send him some. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's to me, it's an odd one.
Yeah, it is.
David Washington, on the other hand, is staying put. How did Chelsea end up cancelling his transfer to Strasbourg, Jules? Please tell us a story here.
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting one, I think. And neither clubs have officially explained why the transfer was cancelled at the last minute. But what we've been told is that Chelsea needed to find some money to balance their books. Around 20 million euros would have helped massively. They thought, hang on a minute, we've got David Washington, who's 19, who's played 60 minutes, I think, in the Premier League in the whole of last season. We've got another club in Strasbourg. Hey, why don't we send David Washington to Strasbourg for 21 million euros, which would be Strasbourg's highest ever signing. Strasbourg, who had already signed a number 9 earlier in the summer, who didn't need a number 9, who didn't want David Washington, who didn't want to go to Strasbourg either. But Chelsea said, yeah, we're doing the deals for 21 million plus 3 in bonuses. So he was about to do his medical, and then at the last minute, Chelsea actually cancelled the deal. Is it because
Raheem Sterling signed for Arsenal and they found the 7 million in savings there?
Maybe. Or is it also because UEFA is already looking at a deal made by Chelsea to Strasbourg, so the two clubs owned by the same owner in Blueco, for 9 million euros, which was not the value of the player. And they thought, hang on, if we let Washington go for 21 million to Strasbourg, and this looks a little bit strange, there might be an investigation in it, because I think UEFA is already looking at the Diego Moreira deal from Chelsea to Strasbourg.
One thing here is so Chelsea signed him for 60 million euros, rising from Santos, rising to 20 million. With bonuses. Now, I'm assuming the guy hasn't fulfilled any of his bonuses. No. So that 60 million after 1 year, it's about 13.7 million left on his amortization, considering his thing. So if they signed him for 21 million, they would have made about 7 million euros.
Yeah.
7 million euros is not far off. The reason I brought up Raheem Sterling, if Arsenal are paying a third of Raheem Sterling's wages, that's not far off a third of Raheem Sterling's wages, right?
Yeah.
If he really is on 375 grand a week.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe they're like also, hey, we don't need to do this. Because they must have realized this was going to be scrutinized, right?
Yeah, I think so. But this was cancelled way before the Raheem Sterling deal to Arsenal actually happened and was agreed. So, but yeah, maybe the two are links. It's just I just think clubs have to be very careful when you move one player from one of your clubs to another one, because more than ever now, as you said, the scrutiny around it is so big.
Yeah, look, and player values are subjective, but you cannot make the argument. No sane person can make an argument that this guy's value goes up from 16 million to 21 million.
Absolutely.
When he's made 2 appearances for Chelsea.
Yeah, definitely. And let's dive deeper into Chelsea, Gabby. They were very busy loaning players out in the final days of the transfer window, but still have 31 senior players listed on their website. How is this going to work?
So it's 31 senior players, not listing all these guys who they've moved. 31 31 senior players, not including David Washington because they snuck him onto the under 21 page. Not including David Datro Fofana, who I think they just kind of, don't see, don't tell. No,
where is he?
The window's closed as far as I know, as far as I can tell from the internet. He isn't signed for anybody. They're hoping the window stays open later in certain places like Turkey.
Like Turkey.
They're hoping to find him a home, but who knows? He might just come back and reappear. They did well on transfer deadline day. Obviously, they find homes for Chalobah, Broja on loan, Ugo Chukwu, Kepa, Petrovic. Another one to Strasbourg. That helps.
He didn't want to go either.
It's still the 31 senior players, I think, are the issue. This does not include all these dudes.
But I guess the likes of Chilwell are going to train separately, right?
Okay, yeah, Chilwell, and then who?
So I don't know. Who would you not want?
I mean...
Like, do you still have Chukwuemeka? People like that?
Chukwuemeka, yeah, he's still there. But you know what? You might need Chukwuemeka because guess what? Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo Lavia, is injured.
Again.
Ugo Chukwu is gone. If you look at Chelsea, this is the bizarro world that we live in. If you look at Chelsea's central midfield, I mean, Vega can play there a little bit, obviously, but they signed him to be more of a defensive left back.
Yeah.
If you look in that position in midfield, they don't have that many guys. Casadei is there, but he's really an attacking midfielder, even though he's a big, tall, strong boy. And he's a kid. This is what's really odd to me about this. So they need... Carney's not a defensive midfielder, but he's a midfielder, right? This is what's also bizarro world.
Because ideally, you would want Maresca to work with 24 players, maybe maximum, including goalkeepers. Not 31.
So let's talk central midfielders, right?
No, but Lavia, you're right.
Lavia, who's injured again. Sorry, Enzo, Caicedo, Dewsbury Hall, and we can debate whether he's a defensive midfielder.
Yeah, that's true.
Lavia, who's injured again.
Yeah.
And then you get into Casadei and Carney. And are you going to play 4-2-3-1 the whole year? You're going to want some alternatives, right? Yeah. Vega, I mean, backing up two positions when you've got 1 million players? Whatever. beIN Sport have reportedly been late making payments to Ligue 1 for their TV deal. Jules, is this a worry? I mean, it's not the first time it's happened. Last time they said, it's because it was Ramadan. It's definitely not Ramadan now.
Yeah, you're right. I think it was around 50 million euros. I think it is a bit of a worry because of the situation that the league finds itself in with the zone coming, the fans not being happy with the zone, going on to streaming websites so they don't pay for the subscription.
Meaning piracy, yeah?
Yeah, piracy. The league itself being in shambles with the new election of the president coming soon, but there was a mess on who could be candidates and not candidates and who had the rights to be there with Vincent Labrune. So it's just an absolute mess. So on the back of all of that, on top of all of that, to have beIN Sport just saying like, just give us a bit more time for 50 million. I mean, 50 million for beIN Sport is, you would think nothing, right?
I mean, look, I don't want to get into this kind of thing, but
I don't know.
Times change for everyone.
True. And back to John Texter, Gab. After Aurel Mangala moved from Lyon to Everton on loan, he went to Instagram and posted, "Congratulations, Aurel. You suddenly look good in blue." Is this a sign that his deal for Everton is getting closer?
Yeah, I don't know if this is just like him being weird. Like, I congratulations as I send you from one of my clubs to another one of my clubs. Like, I don't fully get that. There were suggestions he had a period of exclusivity with Everton. He can get all the periods of exclusivity he wants. He needs to come up with the money, and most people, and I could be wrong, maybe he'll find somebody else to give him money, unless he sells his shares in Palace,
which he hasn't done yet.
And by the way, there are rules about people's significant control. Yes, he's not one of the guys who gets to sit in the room with Parrish, Blitzer, and Harris, where they make the big decisions because they don't allow him in. But equally, he needs to, which is absurd when you think he's got 45% of the club.
Absolutely.
But that's on you.
That's you
bought it. You agreed to that. You decided to do a deal with these guys. Maybe they're a little smarter than you. I don't know. So he's stuck on that one. I also don't know, like, if he sells his 45%, unless he sells it to Harris and Blitzer or to Parrish, but I doubt Parrish has the money to buy that.
I don't think so.
Who's going to buy? Oh, yeah, I'll buy your shares, JT. so that I can go and be excluded from meetings with the other shareholders.
I have no influence on the club that, I own almost half of.
Yeah, and 2 of those 3 other shareholders, by the way, not Parish, are multi-zillionaires who, they don't need this. Like, this loose change to them. They can drive the hardest bargain. So I don't quite get that. I don't know if he's sending messages. I don't know if he's busy with his Brazilian stuff.
Maybe, or his website.
On his website, johntexter.com, where you can also learn all about the history of FaceBank. By the way, I don't know if you're an ABBA fan. I'm going to guess ABBA is probably not your first choice.
No.
But I discovered there's a show here in London.
Oh yeah, that's been going on for a while.
Which has been going on for a while. Where there are holograms of ABBA.
It's very good, apparently.
Well, guess who's involved in that? I don't think he owns the whole thing.
John Texter.
Some of the tech is his. Yes, he figured out a way to.
You see, it's not all bad with JT.
It's not all bad with. No, a lot of it is good. That's why we keep inviting him on. But more details at johntexter.com. Enough, Texter. Come on.
Yeah.
Jules, tell me about Bordeaux's adventures in the 4th division this weekend. And is Rio Mavuba involved?
So, they had the first game up in Poitiers, which I don't think any of the fans had ever been to for a football match.
Isn't Poitiers famous for some historical event? Wasn't there a battle there or something?
There's the Futuroscope as well. It's like
not the Futuroscopes in French.
No, this is good. This is good.
No, there's
a
massive
battle in Poitiers, for sure.
Which was a battle between who? Wasn't it really important?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, history buffs out there, hit us up, please.
And they were 1-0 down, and so for the first game of the season in that 4th division, and they scored an equalizer in the 95th minute from their goalkeeper, who went up for late.
Oh, I love it!
Incredible. Rio Mavuba didn't play with this team in the 4th division. He played with the reserve team in the 5th division, and partly why he decided to do that. And as we said, rejoined the club, despite being 40 years old now, is because the reserve team in the 5th division already had a game last week that they forfeited because they didn't have enough players. And if you forfeit twice in a season, you get chucked out. So he didn't want the team to get chucked out for the reserve. So he joined in. I think they drew as well. I might be wrong, but I thought they drew as well. But he basically helped saving the reserve team to stay in the league for a bit longer. So, so much love for Rio Mavuba and Paul Bass, who also played for the reserve.
I love it. I sense a trip to Bordeaux going on. But hey, speaking of Rio Mavuba, my endless fascination with the fact that he was born at sea.
Said that last time.
Okay, which I think is pretty cool. He's not the only one. So a couple Manchester United fans, and so United have those United historians and stuff like that. And I'm really sorry, I'm forgetting his name. If you remind me on social media, I will name check him on the next show. Some guy who played for Manchester United was apparently born at sea on the trip from the United States to England, presumably.
How long ago are we talking?
Considering he went by boat, I'm guessing, he wasn't like a Pan Am flight in the 60s. It was probably a long, long time ago.
Okay.
So Rio Mavuba is not the only one, but still, very, very cool.
Gab, your transfer analysis piece is coming out this week. What do we have to look forward to?
We've been talking about it endlessly on the show. So
that's your question.
I know. No, I'm just going to try to explain why money's not changing hands. And the reality is football is not the booming business that people thought it was going to be. I think it's still going to grow, but it's not going to grow exponentially. And when people start thinking that tomorrow's not going to be better than today, that's when they stop spending. It's Economics 101.